temporary reinstatement of Illinois' assault weapons ban is expected to generate a lot of talk and some controversy at a gun show this weekend at the Winnebago County Fairgrounds. 23 News reporter Anthony Ferretti talks to event coordinators and gun collectors about the impact of Thursday's ruling by a federal court judge and also shares reaction from state lawmakers.
Each year, the Pecatonica Gun Show usually sees dozens of vendors fill up about 200 tables with weapons, and collectors can find everything from antiques to the latest models, but not this year. Organizers say the assault weapons ban tied up in Illinois in federal courts creates a whole different atmosphere.
Basically, it's just put everybody, on edge.
Marvin Kraus isn't sure what to expect at this year's Pecatonica Gun Show at the Winnebago County Fairgrounds. He is one of the organizers of the typically popular event that draws people from all over the country. But this year's event may be a bit different. On Thursday, a federal appellate judge ruled that basically puts Illinois' controversial assault weapons ban into effect until a higher court can look at it. Judge Frank Easterbrook's decision flips a ruling by a U.S. district judge in southern Illinois, which blocked enforcement of the weapons ban. Many of the gun show's potential vendors say the ruling violates their right to bear arms and leaves their businesses in limbo, so some backed out of the event.
Some of the guys got inventory to get rid of. Some of them, don't know if they can even put it out this weekend.
You cannot take and hold good people accountable for a few bad people. I think it's sad for Illinois people. I think these are good people, and I think that I think it's wrong.
Illinois Attorney General Kwame Marul says he's pleased with Thursday's ruling, saying we continue to be committed to defending the law's constitutionality in court.
I absolutely believe that we should have the right to bear arms. We're on unprecedented times that we've just never seen before.
We did reach out to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department and State's Attorney Jay Hanley for comment. We didn't hear back from either before this story aired.
There is no specific timeline on when a final decision could be made on the law's constitutionality, as this issue could make it to the Supreme Court.